How much do we really know about the woman behind the glamour and mystery of the Trump White House? Melania Trump's private world was laid bare by her former best friend, Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, in a tell-all that shattered the illusion of loyalty. But was their friendship ever genuine? What dark secrets did Stephanie uncover during their years together? And how has Melania's silence shaped her image in the aftermath of their fallout? Let's get into details. It began like any other story of friendship in the glittering social circles of New York City. Two women brought together by ambition, shared values, and the unique demands of their fast-paced lives. Stephanie Winston Wolkoff was already a powerhouse, celebrated for her expertise in fashion and event planning. With her roots at Vogue and as a driving force behind the Met Gala, Stephanie moved effortlessly through the world of high society. It was here, in the early 2000s, that she crossed paths with Melania Trump, the striking Slovenian model who had recently entered the orbit of real estate mogul Donald Trump. At first glance, they seemed like unlikely friends. Stephanie, polished and commanding, embodied New York's relentless energy, while Melania, quiet and poised, projected an aura of mystery that intrigued even her closest acquaintances. Yet it was this contrast that cemented their bond. Melania's reserved demeanor complemented Stephanie's vibrant personality. They were, as Stephanie would later describe, inseparable for more than a decade. Melania, navigating her new role as the girlfriend of one of America's most polarizing public figures, found in Stephanie a confidant who understood the pressures of life in the limelight. Stephanie became a steady presence at her side, offering advice on everything from event planning to personal branding. Melania, for her part, valued Stephanie's loyalty and discretion. Their friendship grew deeper, marked by quiet moments away from prying eyes, where they could simply be themselves. When Melania and Donald Trump married in 2005, the friendship only strengthened. Stephanie was there to witness the union of two vastly different individuals: Donald, brash and larger than life, and Melania, ever the picture of elegance and restraint. To those observing from the outside, their relationship often seemed transactional, more about optics than affection. But Stephanie, privy to their private moments, saw a different side of Melania. She was not merely Donald's arm candy, as critics claimed, but a woman who understood the role she had chosen to play. As the years rolled on, Melania became a fixture in New York society, balancing her roles as a mother to Barron and the wife of a man with a growing political ambition. Stephanie, always by her side, witnessed the small, unguarded moments that defined Melania's life: her sharp wit, her keen eye for detail, and her quiet determination to carve out her own identity amid the chaos that often surrounded her. By the time Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president in 2015, Stephanie's role in Melania's life had evolved. No longer just a friend, she became a trusted advisor, helping Melania navigate the treacherous waters of the campaign trail. While Melania often appeared reluctant to step into the political spotlight, Stephanie worked behind the scenes to ensure her public appearances were seamless, her image carefully curated. Melania's enigmatic nature proved to be both a strength and a weakness. Her aloofness added to her mystique, making her an object of fascination, but it also left her vulnerable to misinterpretation. Critics often questioned her commitment to her husband's campaign, speculating about her silence during key moments, such as the release of the infamous Access Hollywood tape. Through it all, Stephanie stood by her, offering counsel and unwavering support. The 2016 election marked a turning point in both women's lives. Melania, once a reluctant participant in Donald's political aspirations, found herself thrust into the role of First Lady. For Stephanie, it was an opportunity to step into a more formal capacity, assisting Melania in adapting to her new position. Together, they envisioned a First Lady who would bring elegance and empathy to the White House, a modern Jackie Kennedy as Melania often aspired to be. Their bond seemed unshakable as they worked side by side to prepare for the challenges ahead. Stephanie, drawing on her years of experience, became instrumental in shaping Melania's initiatives and public image. Yet beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. The pressures of the presidency, the constant scrutiny, and the complex dynamics of the Trump family were slowly taking their toll. The 2017 inauguration would become both a milestone and a harbinger of what was to come. Stephanie, tasked with overseeing the lavish event, poured her heart into the project. Melania, as always, trusted Stephanie implicitly, confident in her ability to deliver an event befitting the gravity of the occasion. But as the celebration unfolded, controversies surrounding its staggering $100 million budget began to emerge, casting a shadow over what should have been a triumphant moment. The seeds of discord were planted, though neither woman could have predicted the fallout that lay ahead. For now, their friendship remained intact, buoyed by years of shared memories and mutual respect. But the cracks, though faint, were there, a reminder that even the strongest bonds are not immune to the pressures of power and politics. Their story was far from over, but the stage had been set for the unraveling of a friendship that had once seemed unbreakable. For Stephanie, this period marked the height of her connection with Melania, a time when trust and loyalty bound them together. Yet, as the months passed, the strains of life in the White House would test that bond in ways neither woman could have anticipated. The glittering promise of their friendship was beginning to dim, though the reasons for its eventual demise were still shrouded in uncertainty. The White House was unlike anything Stephanie Winston Wolkoff had ever encountered. For all her years navigating the glitz and glamour of New York's elite, nothing could have prepared her for the labyrinthine politics and high-stakes tension of Washington, D.C. The East Wing, where the First Lady's offices were housed, was a far cry from the world of fashion and celebrity galas. Yet Stephanie was determined to support Melania through this transition, bringing her organizational expertise and unshakable loyalty to the task at hand. For Melania, the adjustment was even more daunting. Unlike her husband, she had never sought the limelight in this way. Her position as First Lady was one she had not campaigned for but had to embrace nonetheless. Stephanie observed firsthand how Melania's natural reserve clashed with the overwhelming demands of her new role. Public scrutiny was relentless, and her every move was dissected and analyzed. Yet Melania managed to maintain her characteristic calm, projecting an aura of composure even when the pressures mounted. Together, they began to outline Melania's initiatives, with the Be Best campaign emerging as her signature project. Its focus on children's well-being, online safety, and opioid addiction was noble, but the campaign was met with skepticism from critics who accused it of lacking substance. Stephanie worked tirelessly to support the initiative, helping Melania shape a narrative that would resonate with the public. Despite their best efforts, the campaign struggled to gain traction, overshadowed by the controversies swirling around Donald Trump's administration. Inside the East Wing, tensions were brewing. The First Lady's team was small compared to that of previous administrations, and Melania's deliberate, guarded approach to leadership created friction. Stephanie, who had spent years building a reputation for her straightforwardness and attention to detail, often found herself at odds with the chaotic and unpredictable nature of White House operations. Her direct style clashed with the bureaucracy, and her efforts to protect Melania sometimes made her a target for criticism. It was during this time that Stephanie began to notice the widening gap between the Melania she had known for years and the First Lady she had become. While Melania had always been reserved, her role in the White House demanded a level of engagement that she seemed reluctant to fully embrace. Stephanie observed moments where Melania's detachment became palpable, particularly during public events. The infamous instances where she swatted away Donald Trump's hand or appeared visibly disinterested in his speeches were not just fodder for memes, they were glimpses of the strain she was under. The tension extended beyond the East Wing. The Trump family dynamics added another layer of complexity to Melania's role. Ivanka Trump, Donald's eldest daughter, had positioned herself as an influential figure within the administration, often encroaching on areas traditionally reserved for the First Lady. Stephanie witnessed firsthand the subtle yet undeniable rivalry between Melania and Ivanka, each vying for influence in their own ways. While Ivanka embraced the spotlight with calculated poise, Melania remained steadfast in her preference for privacy, refusing to engage in the power struggle openly. This quiet resistance, however, was not without its consequences. Stephanie found herself caught in the middle, trying to navigate the competing interests of the Trump family while remaining loyal to Melania. It was an impossible balancing act, made all the more challenging by the growing scrutiny surrounding the inauguration. The lavish $100 million event, which Stephanie had played a key role in planning, had come under investigation for its exorbitant costs. Questions about mismanaged funds and potential ethical violations began to surface, casting a shadow over Stephanie's work, and by extension, Melania's judgment in trusting her. As the investigation intensified, Stephanie became a convenient scapegoat. Allegations emerged that her company had received millions of dollars in payments, suggesting impropriety in her handling of the event. The truth, as Stephanie would later reveal, was far more complex. While her company had been used as a pass-through to pay other vendors, she herself had earned a fraction of what was reported, just over $480,000 for months of work. Despite her explanations, the damage to her reputation was swift and severe. Melania's response, or lack thereof, only deepened the wounds. Stephanie had expected her friend to defend her publicly, to stand by her side as she faced mounting criticism. Instead, Melania remained silent, a decision that Stephanie would later describe as the ultimate betrayal. For a friendship that had spanned more than a decade, built on trust and mutual support, the silence was deafening. The fallout from the inauguration scandal marked the beginning of the end for their relationship. Stephanie, feeling abandoned and vilified, began to question everything she had believed about Melania. Was the First Lady she had so fervently supported truly the friend she thought she knew? Or had their relationship always been transactional, a means to an end for both women? As these doubts festered, the dynamics in the East Wing grew more strained. Stephanie, once a trusted advisor, found herself increasingly isolated. Her candid approach and insistence on accountability clashed with the unspoken rules of the Trump administration, where loyalty often meant silence and complicity. Stephanie's willingness to ask difficult questions and push back against questionable decisions made her an outlier and a target. The inauguration controversy continued to loom large, with investigators probing deeper into the financial irregularities. Stephanie, determined to clear her name, provided evidence to show that her role had been above board. She presented documentation to prove that Melania had been aware of the financial arrangements, a revelation that further complicated their already fragile relationship. But the damage was done. The trust that had once defined their friendship had eroded, replaced by suspicion and resentment. For Melania, the scandal was another in a series of challenges that had come to define her tenure as First Lady. Her stoic exterior remained intact, but those closest to her could see the toll it was taking. Stephanie, now on the outside looking in, began to see Melania in a different light. The woman she had once admired for her elegance and strength now seemed distant, her actions driven more by self-preservation than the loyalty they had once shared. Their story was unraveling piece by piece, and the bonds that had once held them together were breaking under the weight of power, politics, and betrayal. For Stephanie, the disillusionment was profound. The friendship that had defined so much of her professional and personal life was slipping away, leaving behind questions that she would spend years trying to answer. The fracture in their relationship was undeniable, yet Stephanie Winston Wolkoff had not yet come to terms with just how far things had deteriorated. The woman she once considered her closest friend, Melania Trump, was now a stranger cloaked in silence and detachment. For Stephanie, the betrayal was not just professional, it was deeply personal. The inauguration scandal had unleashed a torrent of scrutiny, and Stephanie found herself under fire from the media and investigators alike. What hurt most was Melania's refusal to publicly defend her. Stephanie, ever the problem solver, had spent years protecting Melania's image. Now, as her reputation crumbled, she realized no such protection would be extended to her. Stephanie began to piece together the events that led to her downfall. The inaugural committee's exorbitant budget had raised eyebrows almost immediately, and accusations of mismanagement quickly followed. While the press painted her as a profiteer, Stephanie knew she had been caught in a larger game, one she was no longer willing to play. The questions about who had approved the payments and why they were structured as they were pointed not just to the committee but to the Trump family itself. Yet in a world where loyalty to Donald Trump often meant sacrificing personal integrity, few were willing to speak up. For months, Stephanie wrestled with her emotions, torn between anger and disbelief. The woman she had once admired for her poise and strength now seemed complicit in her silence. Melania's unwillingness to address the controversy publicly spoke volumes. Stephanie realized that their friendship had always been secondary to the larger forces at play, forces that prioritized image and survival over loyalty and truth. This realization planted the seed for what would become one of the most explosive revelations of Melania Trump's tenure as First Lady. By 2018, the cracks in the Trump administration were impossible to ignore. The West Wing was mired in controversy, with resignations and scandals dominating headlines. Meanwhile, Melania's East Wing operations struggled to find stability. Stephanie, who had once been Melania's most trusted confidant, was now an outsider, her proximity to the First Lady erased as if it had never existed. The isolation stung, but it also gave Stephanie the clarity she needed to make a decision she had been avoiding for months: to tell her story. Writing her memoir, Melania and Me, was not a decision Stephanie made lightly. She knew the risks. The Trump family's response to criticism was famously brutal, and the backlash from Melania's staunch defenders would be inevitable. Yet Stephanie felt she had no choice. The narrative surrounding her role in the inauguration had been twisted beyond recognition, and her silence only served to validate the falsehoods. For Stephanie, the book was an act of reclamation, not just of her reputation, but of the truth. As she delved into the writing process, Stephanie grappled with the memories of her time with Melania. Their years of friendship had been filled with moments of genuine connection, but now those moments felt like distant echoes. Stephanie's manuscript was not just a recounting of events, it was a dissection of the dynamics that had defined her relationship with Melania, and by extension, the Trump White House. The revelations were as shocking as they were illuminating. When the book was released in 2020, it sent shockwaves through the political and media landscape. Stephanie's candid account of her experiences offered an unprecedented glimpse into Melania's world. A world that was, as Stephanie described it, defined by detachment and calculation. The recordings Stephanie had secretly made of her conversations with Melania became a focal point of the controversy. In one particularly infamous clip, Melania vented her frustration about public expectations, saying, "Who gives an expletive about Christmas stuff and decorations?" It was a rare moment of unfiltered emotion from a woman known for her tightly controlled image. The backlash was immediate and polarizing. Critics of the Trump administration seized upon Stephanie's revelations as further evidence of the dysfunction within the White House. Melania's defenders, however, accused Stephanie of betrayal, questioning her motives and the ethics of recording private conversations. The White House itself issued a statement dismissing Stephanie's claims as falsehoods, accusing her of inflating her relationship with Melania for personal gain. But Stephanie was undeterred. She had anticipated the criticism and prepared for the fallout. To her, the recordings and documentation she provided were proof of her credibility. The public's response, however, was more complex. For some, Stephanie's book offered validation of their long-held suspicions about Melania's role in the Trump administration. For others, it felt like a personal vendetta, a calculated move to capitalize on her proximity to power. Amid the uproar, Melania remained characteristically silent. The First Lady had always maintained an air of mystery, and her refusal to engage with Stephanie's allegations only deepened the intrigue. Yet for those who knew her, this silence was not surprising. Melania's strategy had always been to let controversies burn out on their own, avoiding confrontation wherever possible. To Stephanie, however, this silence was not strategic, it was cowardly. The book's release coincided with the final months of Donald Trump's presidency, a time marked by chaos and uncertainty. As the nation grappled with the fallout from the 2020 election, Stephanie's revelations became part of a larger narrative about the Trump era. The stories she shared about Melania's life behind the scenes, her frustrations, her coping mechanisms, and her interactions with Donald, offered a rare glimpse into the personal toll of life in the White House. Yet for all the insight the book provided, it also raised more questions than it answered. What did Melania's silence truly signify? Was it a calculated choice to preserve her image, or was it an admission of complicity? And what of their friendship? Was it ever as genuine as Stephanie believed, or had it always been a transactional relationship built on convenience rather than trust? For Stephanie, these questions lingered, haunting her even as she moved on from the chaos of the Trump administration. The release of Melania and Me marked a turning point not just for Stephanie, but for the public's perception of Melania Trump. For years, she had been viewed as an enigma, a woman whose reserved demeanor masked her true thoughts and motivations. Stephanie's revelations cracked that facade, offering a more complex portrait of a First Lady who was both a product of her circumstances and an active participant in shaping them. But the story was far from over. As Stephanie continued to navigate the fallout from her decision to speak out, she found herself reflecting on the years she had spent by Melania's side. The memories were bittersweet, tinged with the pain of betrayal and the weight of unresolved questions. Yet, even as she moved forward, Stephanie knew that her connection to Melania would always be a part of her story, a chapter that, no matter how painful, could not be erased. The storm that followed the publication of Stephanie Winston Wolkoff's memoir showed no signs of abating. As 2020 unfolded into a year of unprecedented events, a global pandemic, social unrest, and a contentious presidential election, the revelations from Melania and Me added another layer to the complex tapestry of the Trump era. Stephanie found herself both lauded and criticized, her actions dissected by pundits and the public alike. Amidst the chaos, one development would escalate the situation to new heights, a legal battle that tested her resolve and further strained any remaining ties with Melania Trump. In the waning days of the Trump administration, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against Stephanie. The claim was that she had violated a non-disclosure agreement by publishing her book, which contained detailed accounts of her time in the White House and her interactions with the First Lady. The legal action was unprecedented, a sitting administration suing a former aide over a tell-all book. For Stephanie, it felt like another attempt to silence her, to discredit her experiences and tarnish her credibility. The lawsuit alleged that Stephanie had breached a contractual obligation to maintain confidentiality regarding her work with Melania. Stephanie's legal team countered that the agreement was invalid, arguing it was not signed by a government official and that it unconstitutionally sought to muzzle free speech. The legal wrangling captured public attention, raising questions about the lengths to which the administration would go to suppress unfavorable narratives. As the case unfolded, Stephanie remained steadfast. She appeared on news programs, articulating her position with clarity and conviction. This lawsuit is a meritless attempt to weaponize the Justice Department against a private citizen, she stated in one interview. Her stance resonated with those who viewed the legal action as an overreach, a chilling precedent for government suppression of dissent. Meanwhile, Melania Trump continued to maintain her silence. Publicly, she focused on her duties as First Lady, attending events and promoting her initiatives. Yet observers couldn't help but note her increasingly rare appearances and the subdued nature of her engagements. The East Wing, once a hub of activity, seemed to retreat further into the background as the administration grappled with mounting challenges. In January 2021, as a new administration prepared to take office, the Department of Justice abruptly dropped the lawsuit against Stephanie. The decision came without explanation, but many speculated that the change in leadership prompted a reassessment of the case's merit. For Stephanie, it was a vindication of sorts, a closure to one chapter of her tumultuous journey. With the legal battle behind her, Stephanie continued to share her insights into the inner workings of the Trump White House. She became a sought-after commentator, her perspectives providing a unique window into the dynamics that had shaped one of the most controversial presidents in American history. Her commentary extended beyond her personal experiences, delving into analyses of Melania's public appearances and the subtle messages they conveyed. One such instance was Melania's departure from the White House on Inauguration Day. Clad in somber black, she did not stop for the customary photo op on the White House steps, a tradition upheld by previous First Ladies. Instead, she moved swiftly, her expression inscrutable behind dark sunglasses. Stephanie interpreted this as a final act of disengagement, a refusal to participate in the ceremonial aspects of a transition she did not endorse. In the months that followed, Melania receded from the public eye. Reports surfaced of her and Donald Trump settling into their residence in Florida, with Melania focusing on family and personal projects. Speculation abounded about her future plans. Would she revive her modeling and fashion endeavors, engage in philanthropic work, or continue to live a life shielded from the spotlight? Stephanie offered her own perspectives on these questions. She suggested that Melania was unlikely to seek a return to public life in any significant capacity. "Melania values her privacy above all else," Stephanie remarked in an interview. Her experiences in the White House only reinforced her desire to remain distant from the public scrutiny that comes with her husband's notoriety. The public's perception of Melania Trump had evolved significantly since her tenure as First Lady began. Initially seen by some as a potential moderating influence on her husband, her limited public engagements and reluctance to address controversial issues led to criticisms of complicity or indifference. Stephanie's revelations added depth to this narrative, painting a picture of a woman who was both aware of and, at times, resigned to the realities of her circumstances. Yet there were those who sympathized with Melania, viewing her as a private individual thrust into an unwelcome spotlight. Her few public statements post-White House were measured, focusing on her initiatives related to children's well-being. She launched a personal office to continue her Be Best campaign, signaling an intention to maintain some aspects of her public role. As for Stephanie, she channeled her experiences into advocacy for transparency and ethical conduct within government institutions. She participated in discussions on media ethics, non-disclosure agreements in politics, and the importance of whistleblowing in holding power to account. Her journey from a trusted confidant to a public critic served as a case study in the complexities of personal relationships within the political sphere. The ongoing tensions between Stephanie and Melania underscored a broader narrative about loyalty, betrayal, and the costs of proximity to power. Their story resonated with many who had witnessed similar dynamics in their own lives, albeit on a less grand scale. The themes of trust and disillusionment were universal, transcending the particulars of their unique circumstances. As the world moved forward, so did both women, each charting her own path. Stephanie continued to write and speak, her experiences serving as a cautionary tale about the entanglements of friendship and politics. Melania remained an enigma, her silence leaving room for endless speculation but few concrete answers. The legacy of their broken friendship lingered, a reminder of how relationships can be tested and fractured by ambition, power, and the relentless gaze of the public eye. For Stephanie, there was solace in having her voice heard, in reclaiming her narrative from the shadows of misunderstanding. For Melania, the choice to remain distant perhaps offered a semblance of control in a world that so often sought to define her on its own terms. In the end, their intertwined stories reflected the complexities of human connection amidst extraordinary circumstances. The lessons drawn from their experiences served as a reflection on the nature of trust, the weight of silence, and the enduring quest for authenticity in a world where appearances often mask deeper truths. In the quiet aftermath of her time in the White House, Melania Trump receded into the private life she had always seemed to crave. The loud chaos of her husband's political career, the unrelenting media scrutiny, and the constant controversies that had defined their years in Washington gave way to a slower, more secluded existence in Florida. For those who had followed her enigmatic journey as First Lady, this retreat was both expected and puzzling. Melania had always been a woman of few words, her actions often inviting interpretation, but rarely providing clarity. Now her silence seemed more deliberate than ever. Stephanie Winston Wolkoff watched from a distance as Melania stepped away from public life. Their friendship, once central to both women's lives, was now a memory, fractured beyond repair. Yet even as she moved forward, Stephanie couldn't fully disentangle herself from the legacy of her relationship with Melania. It wasn't just about the betrayal or the fallout from the inauguration scandal. It was about the questions that lingered, the truths left unspoken. In interviews and public appearances, Stephanie reflected on these unresolved feelings. "There's still a part of me that wonders if I ever really knew her," she admitted during one particularly candid discussion. Melania is a master of compartmentalization. She can shut out the world, shut out people, even those closest to her, without a second thought. That's her strength and her weakness. This observation resonated with those who had long studied Melania's carefully curated public persona. From her earliest days as a model to her time as First Lady, Melania had displayed an uncanny ability to project elegance and detachment simultaneously. It was a quality that fascinated some and alienated others. To Stephanie, it was both admirable and infuriating. The woman she had once trusted implicitly had become a puzzle she could no longer solve. As Melania's post-White House life unfolded, it became clear that her priorities lay far from the public sphere. Reports suggested that she was focused on her son, Barron, ensuring his education and well-being remained her top concern. Public appearances were rare, and when they did occur, they were tightly controlled. Even Donald Trump's ongoing political ambitions seemed to take a back seat in her world. While he launched rallies and hinted at another presidential run, Melania remained conspicuously absent, a quiet presence in the background. This absence fueled speculation about the state of their marriage, a topic that had always been a point of fascination. Rumors swirled about separate lives and private agreements, but as always, Melania offered no confirmation or denial. Her silence was her shield, a barrier that few could penetrate. To Stephanie, this silence was nothing new. "She's always known how to retreat when it suits her," Stephanie remarked. "It's her way of maintaining control." For Stephanie, maintaining control took on a different form. Her decision to share her story had not come without consequences, but it had also brought a sense of empowerment. The chapters of her life that had been defined by her connection to Melania were now part of a broader narrative about the costs of loyalty and the complexities of power. Stephanie became an advocate for transparency, using her experiences to highlight the often unseen dynamics of politics and personal relationships. Her work extended beyond interviews and memoirs. Stephanie engaged with organizations focused on ethics and government, sharing her insights into the challenges of navigating loyalty and integrity in high-pressure environments. She also spoke openly about the emotional toll of her experiences, connecting with audiences who had faced their own struggles with betrayal and trust. Meanwhile, Melania's quiet life in Florida continued to captivate public curiosity. Each rare appearance sparked a flurry of analysis, from her fashion choices to her demeanor. Yet the most enduring questions about her, her thoughts, her motivations, her true feelings, remained unanswered. For some, this mystery was part of her allure. For others, it was a source of frustration. "She's an enigma by design," Stephanie said in one interview, "and she's not going to let anyone change that." As time passed, the legacy of their broken friendship evolved. Stephanie found peace in her new role as a commentator and advocate, while Melania seemed content to let the world speculate about her life. The distance between them was more than just physical. It was ideological, emotional, and perhaps inevitable. Their paths had diverged, shaped by choices that reflected their fundamentally different approaches to life and loyalty. Yet, even in their separation, their stories remained intertwined. The tale of Melania Trump and Stephanie Winston Wolkoff was one of ambition, betrayal, and resilience. It was a story that mirrored the broader dynamics of the Trump era, a period defined by division and the relentless pursuit of image over substance. For Stephanie, it was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the risks inherent in proximity to power. For Melania, it was another chapter in a life that had always been shrouded in mystery. As the years stretched on, both women continued to navigate their respective paths. Stephanie's voice grew stronger, her platform expanding as she used her experiences to advocate for change. Melania's silence endured, her enigmatic presence ensuring that she remained a subject of fascination. Together, their story served as a reflection on the complexities of human connection and the enduring impact of choices made in the pursuit of ambition. The friendship they once shared had long since faded, but its echoes lingered, a testament to the power of relationships to shape and define us, even when they end. For Stephanie, there was closure in telling her story. For Melania, the world may never know if closure was something she sought or if, true to form, she had already moved on without looking back. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.